Okay, so when you think about a war, you're probably picturing something that lasts for months, maybe even years, right? Well, what if I told you about a war that was fought and won in less time than it takes to watch your favorite sitcom? Today, we're diving into the story of the shortest and honestly one of the most bizarre wars in all of recorded history. Yep, you're seeing that right. 38 minutes. On the morning of August 27th, 1896, the British Empire went to war with the Sultanate of Zanzibar. And before most people had even finished their morning coffee, it was all over. A war declared and won in just 38 minutes. So that's the big question, isn't it? How is that even possible? It sounds like a joke. But the story behind this incredibly short conflict tells you everything you need to know about power, about technology, and about the sheer force of colonial ambition at its peak. So let's get into it. To really get why this war happened, you have to understand the diplomatic powder keg it was sitting on. This wasn't just some random fight. No, this was the explosion at the end of a long, tense power struggle between an empire and a state that dared to step out of line. The key word for all of this is protectorate. See, Zanzibar wasn't exactly independent. It was a British protectorate. Now, what does that mean? Well, it means that while Zanzibar had its own sultan and its own government, the British Empire really had the final say on anything important, especially who got to be the next sultan. And for Britain, controlling Zanzibar was absolutely vital. It was a major trade hub in East Africa. So here's where it all kicks off. The Sultan, who was very friendly with the British, dies suddenly. And before Britain can install their chosen successor, the Sultan's nephew, a guy named Khalid bin Bargash, makes a move. He storms the palace with his supporters and just declares himself the new ruler. Now, for the British Empire, this was a massive problem. It wasn't just breaking the rules, it was a public slap in the face. In their eyes, this wasn't just a local power grab, it was a full-blown rebellion. So with their authority challenged, the British decided to respond. And this is where the story pivots from a political drama to, well, one of the most lopsided showdowns you can possibly imagine. The difference in power here is about to become painfully obvious. So on one side, you have the British Empire, with the most powerful navy the world had ever seen. And on the other, you have the Sultanate of Zanzibar, a small island nation. You can probably see where this is going. And when you look at the actual forces involved, it's just staggering. The British had 5 modern steel-plated warships armed with the latest heavy artillery. And the Sultan? He had his personal royal yacht, the HHS Glasgow, a single wooden ship with a few small cannons. His main force was about 2,800 palace guards armed with rifles. It wasn't a fair fight. It wasn't even a fight. It was a 19th century industrial superpower versus a state that just had no way to compete. So the British consul gives Sultan Khalid an ultimatum, a very simple one. You have until 9 a.m. tomorrow, August 27th, to lower your flag, leave the palace, and give up. If you don't, my ships are going to open fire. The clock officially started ticking. But here's the fatal mistake. Sultan Khalid just didn't believe them. According to the reports, he was convinced that the British were bluffing, that they would never actually dare to fire on the historic palace. So he hunkered down with his guards, ready to call their bluff. It was a terrible, terrible miscalculation. At 9 o'clock sharp, the deadline passes. Nothing happens. Then, at 2 minutes past 9, the Royal Navy cruisers unleash hell. The palace, made mostly of wood, just starts to disintegrate under the explosive shells. Just 3 minutes later, at 9:05, the Sultan's lone yacht fires its tiny cannons and is immediately sunk. By 9:40 a.m., the palace is on fire, the Sultan's flag has been shot down, and the bombardment stops. Just like that, it's over. The peace that came after was just as fast and just as brutal as the war itself. The smoke was still rising from the palace as the British Empire moved to reestablish its complete and total authority. They were going to make an example out of Zanzibar. The price of those 38 minutes was paid almost entirely by one side. Around 500 of the Sultan's men, his guards, his palace staff, were either killed or seriously wounded in the shelling. And the British casualties? 1. A single British sailor was slightly injured. 1. The gap between those two numbers tells you everything. This wasn't a battle. It was a demonstration. A very bloody demolition. So what happened to Sultan Khalid? Well, the moment the shells started hitting, he realized his mistake and ran out the back. He ended up taking refuge in the German consulate. With him out of the picture, the British didn't waste a second. They immediately put their own guy on the throne. Within hours, their control over Zanzibar was stronger than it had ever been. In the end, the Anglo-Zanzibar War became the poster child for a concept called gunboat diplomacy, and it's exactly what it sounds like. You park your powerful warships, your gunboats, off someone's coast and use the threat of total annihilation to get them to do whatever you want. It's politics through overwhelming force. And that's really what this whole story is about. It's more than just a weird piece of trivia. It's a chilling look at a time when the gap in power between nations was so enormous that an entire war could be wrapped up in half an hour. It really makes you stop and think, doesn't it? How do those same kinds of power imbalances continue to write the story of our world today?